Hello, all. Thank you for joining us this morning for Shatterproof's and the Atlas team's first CEO and Senior Leader Roundtable. And as you enter the Zoom room, if you could answer the poll on the question, or sorry, the poll that is up on the screen. And if you have any additional questions, if you could drop them in the chat. One of our program coordinators, Amelia Wilburn, will respond to those, or we'll triage them for the question and answer section later. And I'll give just, let's say, 30 more seconds. Want to be respectful of time, and it looks like we have a quorum already. So going to dive in shortly. Perfect. Okay. So let's get started in that case. So welcome, as I mentioned, to the Atlas CEO and Senior Leader Roundtable. We're very grateful to have you today. Just as a brief overview in terms of who kind of our key speakers will be. Hi, my name is Carolyn Davidson. I'm the Vice President of State Engagement for Shatterproof. So in that work, I lead our team on the ground, both physically and virtually in our Atlas states. And we'll also have words shared from two providers, Lisa Blanchard, who is the Vice President of Clinical Services at Spectrum Health Services. And, I'm moving my windows, Jennifer Duncan Sanford, who's the National Strategic and Account Director for Hazelden Betty Ford. I'm going to close that, move that out of the way. And so just as a brief agenda before we get into our keynote speaker, if you will, to let you know that we'll start with the objectives of the event, a brief introduction to Atlas, reasons to participate in Atlas, as well as a call to action, and then key takeaways before a Q&A section. And we certainly encourage you to jump in. We know that senior leaders do not tend to be bashful, and we are very appreciative of that. So we'd really love you to share your thoughts today. And just a brief note that in terms of the objectives of this session, we are aiming to share the Atlas vision, provide an update on current progress and activities, communicate the benefit of participation, and then really demonstrate why your involvement is critical beyond the benefit to your facility and your patients. But with that, I will turn it over to our CEO and founder, Gary Mendell.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you all who are joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. As you know, I'm Gary Mendell. I'm the founder and CEO of Shatterproof. And I think as you also know, we are deeply committed at Shatterproof to do our part, to do what we can, to bring people together, to really change the treatment landscape in the United States for those suffering with a substance use disorder. And we really need your help to do it. There's no way that we can do this on our own. A little bit more about myself on a personal note. For those who don't know me, my career was primarily not in healthcare nor nonprofit work. My older son, Brian, struggled with addiction from age 17 to 25 and tried his hardest, went to 8 different treatment programs over 8 years and was starting to do better. And then in October 2011, I was woken up in the middle of the night, and when I picked up my cell phone, I was told that my son had just died. He was 25 and he hadn't used a substance in 13 months. And equally tragic, it wasn't just addiction that took his life. What ultimately happened with my son is that it was just about every day feeling ashamed of himself, feeling like an outcast that caused him to wake up that morning, research suicide notes, write a note of his own, and take his own life after not having used a substance for 13 months. So after that, obviously there's nothing worse as a father. I really struggled with 2 questions. What could I have done differently as a father? and what could be done to spare other families of the tragedy that we had suffered. And I took what I thought would be 3 months away from my business, and I traveled the country looking for answers to those two questions, speaking with leading experts all across the country, researchers, policymakers, families, advocates, government agencies, etc. And when I did that, after a few months, when I came back to my office and I took out a pad, I wrote a few things. I wrote big, how big this disease was. I had no idea it was 20 million, and now the numbers look like 40 million people in this country suffering with a substance use disorder. I had no idea it was that big. Second thing I learned, that 8 out of 10 of those addicted became addicted before their 18th birthday. It's mostly, not fully, but a large part about this is about our teens developing this disease when their brains are not fully developed. But the third thing I wrote down on my piece of paper was the word tragic. And what that meant to me when I wrote it was almost as bad as when my son died. Because I learned what that word represented is that I learned that all this research existed, proven research funded by NIDA, and on ways that things that our communities, our healthcare system, and our families could do. And if they followed these certain things, less of our loved ones would use drugs and become addicted. Also in that body of knowledge, buried in medical journals, was things that treatment programs should be doing. And if they did those, patient outcomes would be significantly better. Again, not opinion, this was proven by randomly controlled trials. So there it was in front of me, proven research that could have prevented or could have improved the outcome of my son in treatment, and not just my son, millions of others. And so I crossed out the word tragic and I put the word hope, because there was the answer to these two questions. What could I have done differently as a father? I should have known more. I should have known what to look for in treatment. I should have known more when I was raising my family, how it could have been prevented, but I hadn't. And what could be done to spare other families was to get this information out to others. Everything that was buried in medical journals. And create systematic change. So not we got this out to others, the system got this out to others. And that's what led to, when I saw that, that's what led to me leaving my business, spending 1.5 years with those researchers and government policy agents and providers and others around the country, developing a business plan. What leads specifically, and I think for those of you who follow us, our business plan has 3 areas. Doing what we can to transform the treatment system in partnership with others, reducing shame and stigma, and providing education to families in ways that families, it's consumable to them. So for this call, I'm just going to narrow it right down to Atlas, which is a piece of a major component of improving the treatment system in the United States. To me, coming from a background in business, this was fairly conceptually simple. Not simple to do, but conceptually simple. What we needed was one national standard of care for the treatment of addiction that everyone was unarguable and everybody bought into, and a way to measure it so we can give that information to families when they're looking for treatment programs and compare treatment programs, who was offering things that they needed and who weren't. To give it to providers so they can see how they stacked up in all these areas and compare it to national averages of other providers with similar type treatment programs. For learning for providers, to give it to states so they can see how their state average lines up against the average of all other states. Maybe they're low in one particular area and it's a simple policy change that we can fix. To give it to payers so they can learn from it, to build their networks. So that was the simple vision. Obviously simple in vision, not easy to implement, but doable. So the first step was one national standard of care. Just as embedded our name, Shatterproof, proof It's not what I think or Carolyn thinks or Leah thinks or Angad thinks. It's what does the science showed. We tore apart the Surgeon General's report in 2016. I contacted the leading author of that report, who wrote that report, and combined with him and Pew Charitable Trusts, we pulled out 8 national principles of care and have gained broad industry acceptance on it. So now there was one national standard. And I also knew that coming from a background in business, you can't have 30 things or 40 things. It's got to be less than 10 that people can focus on that were the most important to patient care, patient outcomes. So we had a national standard. The next step was again, fairly intuitive, a quality measurement system to gather data from sources of information, from claims data, from patients, from providers, triangulate it, bring it in, and just transparently showing it. No opinions on ours, whatever the data shows, we just put it out there and make sure that patients have it so they can make good decisions, make sure that providers have it so they can learn from it, make sure that states and payers have it. Fairly simple concept. So we raised $5 million in funding and we built it and tested it in 6 states. I think as you all know, it launched a year and a half ago in July 2020 in 6 states. Then the $5 million ran out. The states loved it. They gave us funding for 2 more years, for 2021 and now to 2022 to keep it going. And the exciting part is those 6 states represent 13% of the United States population, about what you would think. 6 divided by 50 is round numbers, about 13%. We had some small states, some large states. The wonderful news is we're now expanding into 13 states. So those 13 states, simple average would be, call it roughly double the 13%. But because we have large states coming in, California, Florida, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, et cetera, these 13 states will represent 13% of the United States population looking for treatment, 43%. So just in a year and a half since we launched, we're now going into 43% of the United States population looking for treatment. And we're talking to several other states now. I'm sure we'll have new states as we go throughout the year. So, and traffic is building every day. Every time we add a new state, that's more people in that state that hear about it. They talk to their friends and neighbors and family in other states, and it's spreading around the country. So traffic is building. So from a provider's standpoint, this is wonderful for you. You're going to get data now, seeing how you compare to across all this population, how your treatment program compares, and you can see ways to improve. And for those providers, which is most, from my experience, only want to do better and help people, what a great way to get your information out. So the unscrupulous providers, which I think is very, very few, will not be getting any business because they're not providing the right care and they're not giving us data. So what a great tool. So with that, I'm just going to finish up with a couple comments and turn it over to the team. I just can't thank you all enough for being on this call. For everybody on this call helping us and being a part of this, I just can't thank you enough. I mean, from my heart, my life now is built around responding to those 2 questions. I now know what I could have done different as a father. I can't change that. But I can use that information to spare other families. And that's the culture and thread and mission of Shatterproof, helping others. And you all on this call are part of that. So I can't thank you enough. And throughout this presentation, any suggestions of how we can do what we're doing better, this is not Shatterproof's program, Atlas. This is all our program. We're here to help the treatment system and help families. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening to me and inviting me to this call, Carolyn and team. Of course, I wouldn't have missed it. And look forward to the rest of the conversation today and partnering with all of you as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gary. We're incredibly grateful that you could join today's call. And so Gary actually shared quite a good bit about Atlas, which is fantastic. So we will keep things brief and get to what I call the meat and potatoes of the conversation. So I believe that most of you on the call know what Atlas is, and certainly Gary's description was very helpful, but just to reiterate kind of the key things that make Atlas so unique and important in the addiction treatment space are that it includes a consumer-friendly needs assessment, transparent indicators of treatment quality. It is not funded by providers in any way, and it's not pay to play. It includes a comprehensive list of facilities. So it spans the continuum of care from outpatient, IOP, inpatient, and residential. It also includes educational content and professional portals. And very importantly, to Gary's point about the importance of helping people find the treatment they need, Atlas is completely free and not for profit. So really our goal here is not to make money, but instead to help people find the treatment that's best for them. And so to briefly recap what Gary said, Atlas started 3 years ago now with 5 million in funding and 6 states. We developed and assessed quality measures and had them validated and reviewed by different experts, including the National Quality Forum. We developed state advisory committees. We gathered and analyzed the data. We launched a technical assistance series and the website. And so from those somewhat humble beginnings, to Gary's point, the platform will soon be live in states with more than 40% of the US population. And we're excited that many of you today are from these new states. I know we have a lot of faces from Florida, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and a few that span multiple states.
And Carolyn, on that point, to that map, go back for a second, please. Just so it doesn't confuse anybody, there's 2 states that we haven't announced yet, Washington and Connecticut, so they don't show up on the map, because you'll see 11 on that map. It's 13 now that are committed and signed up and fully funded. Thanks.
Thanks, Gary. No, I'm glad that you pointed that out exactly. And we are, to Gary's point, rapidly growing. And so, many of you may think, well, that's fine and dandy, but how many people use Atlas? And so since our launch on July 20th of 2020, Atlas has been visited more than 171,000 times. Individuals have conducted more than 56,000 searches on Atlas, and facilities have been viewed more than 27,000 times. And actually that number is a little low. It's since grown quite rapidly. So Atlas is being used already and will continue to grow. We've devoted more resources to marketing the platform so that people who need it can find it. And so now kind of the reason that you all are here, why should your organization participate in Atlas? So Atlas benefits multiple groups. It benefits your facility, your patients, and the treatment landscape as a whole. But we know that many of us are on because we care about patients, we care about family members. And so Atlas is really a website that is for patients and their family members. It helps patients easily find care that meets their needs. They can easily compare facilities side by side. They can leave meaningful reviews of their experience and read reviews from others. They can find information and support to help them navigate the treatment system, which even for those of us working in addiction is still difficult. And it builds trust and transparency. And I'll note that really with Atlas, our aim is not to point to one single facility as the best facility ever. Instead, our aim is to share transparent information to help patients find the care that is best for them. For instance, we know that residential treatment is not right for everyone, but is very right for some, similar to outpatient or IOP. And so our goal with the website is to help patients navigate to the most appropriate care. And having your data on the website makes that even easier for them. And so not just for your patients, but also for your facility. Obviously, those of you on the call today are predominantly senior leaders and are thinking about, okay, how does this benefit my organization? There are a million efforts that help patients, but what does this do for our facility? And so as you see here, there are several different components that really Atlas helps your organization with. This is an opportunity to ethically market your facility to patients. It also levels the playing field, as we noted. We are not for profit. Atlas is not for profit. Shatterproof is not for profit. And it doesn't list only one type of facility. So it lists both not for profit and for profit facilities, as well as the continuum of care. You can also connect with other providers and resources. It demonstrates your commitment to state-sponsored initiatives. You can leverage your Atlas participation for benefits from payers, as well as demonstrate your quality and transparency. And you gain the opportunity to partner with Atlas. We'll have some providers speaking today who have also submitted their data. And you can access free data about your facility, including benchmarking and patient experience information. And so kind of to tie it up, your involvement is important for your staff, your patients, and for the field. And so participating in Atlas really demonstrates this commitment to quality and also allows your staff to understand where are places that your facilities can improve and to access free resources to improve your facilities. Also, we mentioned several reasons that it's important for your patients. And then it also helps advance the addiction treatment field. We know that you're on the call because you care about addiction treatment and you care about the field. This is a really unique and exciting opportunity that is truly for free. You don't have to pay anything to be involved in Atlas. And I'll just note briefly, and if we have time later, we'll do a demo, but just wanted to make sure that we save time for questions and discussion, that the key point, one of the key parts of Atlas that's available to facilities who submit data and is not publicly available is what we call our password protected portals. And so these are portals that you log into that allow you to benchmark your facility against your peers in the state to understand how you're measuring up on quality metrics. And you can also view patient experience survey data. So for those who don't have patient experience surveys in their facilities or who are looking for a more standardized way to collect those data, at Atlas, we have a patient experience survey that is completely standardized across all facilities. And on the back end, we package that information and tie it up for you in a neat bow so you can see how you compare to other facilities and also readily access information about what patients are saying about your facility. And so at this point, I'd like to pause to, who better to speak to senior leaders than senior leaders themselves. So I'm going to pause to turn it over first to Lisa and then to Jennifer to talk about really why Atlas and quality measurement is important to them. So Lisa, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. So I don't have slides. I'm really just here to talk, right? To just share kind of our reasonings as an organization for being part of this and what our experience has been like working with Shatterproof on the Atlas measures. And so just so that you all know where I'm coming from, I'm the Vice President of Clinical Services at Spectrum Health Systems. We're a nonprofit substance use treatment provider based in Massachusetts for over 50 years. We have community-based services across Massachusetts and correctional services as well in Massachusetts, Georgia, and Virginia. 15 outpatient programs and 7 inpatient programs across almost all of the ASAM levels. And part of why we chose to be part of this initiative when it came to Massachusetts was that idea of having a partnership to really develop those quality metrics, right? That's been as much evidence is out there, as we heard Gary talk really clearly about, there hasn't been kind of a unified approach in our field. I've been doing this for over, 20 years that kind of aligns with kind of everybody being on the same page about what a quality program is and having that being based on evidence. And so we're really able to be part of kind of developing on a national kind of more universal treatment and recovery language about what treatment should look like and what the options are for individuals and families. And one of the other things that I especially appreciate is that evidence-based and running treatment programs that provide medication for addiction treatment. And a big part of my career is reducing stigma about those evidence-based practices, is that by highlighting kind of some of those evidence-based practices out there, it's kind of reducing that stigma for the broader community who maybe just has a lot of myths and misinformation about the use of medications and about what substance use treatment can look like, right? It's often that black box for loved ones and families about what happens when somebody enters treatment or what happens in a treatment program. And it's challenging for folks to get kind of real information about what that should look like. But from the provider perspective, it allows us to highlight that we do have several evidence-based practices and best practices in our treatment programs, so that when individuals are looking for care, they're going to see kind of the list of all of the things that we do provide as an organization, and line it up against those who may, for whatever their reasons are, may not be providing that breadth of service that is very well needed. And just the process of it, I've been kind of working directly with Shatterproof on the process since we've done our second round of data collection. And when you heard Gary talk about that partnership working with providers, I would echo that, in that a lot of the feedback, and again, probably like many of you, I'm not shy in my feedback, really was taken into account. So these kind of data collection opportunities are much simpler now, right? So the experience in round one and everybody's learning and figuring out how to do this, and the experience in kind of the second round of data collection was much easier from a provider perspective, right? Having, over 20 programs, it's a bit of an administrative challenge to answer surveys, and that process got much easier, based on that partnership with Shatterproof on that measure. And just a couple of broader kind of healthcare landscape things, Atlas can really kind of support the quality initiatives and your strategic planning. There's definitely a partnership between payers and Shatterproof and providers on developing kind of this quality system. And so looking at ways that we can all be integrating with, mental health if we're not already, or integrating with physical health or primary care. And I'll just give an example of that kind of payer connection. Spectrum is working with a payer right now on being kind of an innovative provider partner, working towards kind of piloting things and adjusting our treatment to improve outcomes. And as part of that payer relationship, we're actually being measured using the Shatterproof principles that are represented in Atlas. So it kind of aligns with some of the things that we need to do, both to improve outcomes for our patients, because that's what we all want to do and why we're here, but also to make sure that we are moving towards the changing, ever evolving and changing landscape, and making sure that substance use treatment is included in those healthcare changes. So, I welcome questions or feedback, but with that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer to share her experience.
Thank you. And thank you, Lisa. Really important information. And again, I really appreciate being here. And thank you to Shatterproof for inviting us to come today. So it's really great. Thank you so much. So with this, I want to just talk about how important this is. It is the amount of fraud and just illegal activity that happened when substance use became a really reimbursable benefit from insurance companies was astronomical. If you just Google fraud and substance use treatment, you'll just see FBI raids everywhere, people taking advantage, people paying for people to relapse so that they can go back into treatment and it got ridiculous. And I am with Hazel and Betty Ford, and we really value the excellent clinical measurement-based, evidence-based treatment. We have sites across the country, and with Shatterproof, we've been working with our New York site and our Florida site, and we'll continue to work with you as you expand across the country. We treat everything from detox all the way through to recovery management. And we have found with the fraud that was going on, even though we're across the country and we were referring to, locations or states that we may not be, it was hard to try to refer to a location that here we had somebody, we feel like we did this, excellent job in being able to help this person get to a certain stage in their recovery. And then where do we refer them to where we can trust that recovery will continue in a positive way? So Hazel and Betty Ford created our own kind of vetted network where we have been able to really look at who across the country can we refer to, from sober living homes to treatment centers. So when we, were able to work with Shatterproof and this atlas, it was right up our alley. It just absolutely is so important to be able to continue that treatment from, going from our location to a location that we, don't have treatment center, to know that our patients are being taken care of. And that, to trust that Shatterproof, looking at their vetting process is fabulous. So really trust that who we're referring to in those locations is an excellent referral source. And so with that, we also want to be part of the a positive referral source. So we want to refer out positive, to clinically ethical folks, and we want to be considered that. So with that, we also, we've worked with different payers, across the country. We're a Blue Center for Distinction. We're a part of the Optum's Platinum programs, as 360 programs. We have centers of excellence here. And then, when we heard about this, we're like, we want to be part. So with that, I was like, let's go. I have asked 1,000 questions, and I can't even just say how wonderful the Atlas and Shatterproof group has been with being able to answer my questions, how silly or detailed they might be. And it really has been a nice partnership to be able to work together. And to get this survey done, yes, it's long. Yes, it does take time. I found the best way to be able to do that is to just set up a meeting with the site leader, with one of our credentialing network folks, and then myself, and we just hammered it out. So, and that was being able to get, instead, we didn't have 1,000 emails going back and forth, just set that meeting and work it out. So it's valuable. It will help not just with you receiving referrals, but also making sure that when you can use it yourself and know that when you're referring out, you are referring to trusted providers and that will take good care of the patients that you care so much about. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer and Lisa. We are deeply grateful for you taking the time to speak today and for all of the time that you have put in, both to participating in Atlas and also to giving your feedback. And we are just so grateful that we've been able to help you along that process. And so I would like to think that what's in all the attendees' heads right now is, okay, I'm swayed. How do I participate? I know you may be somewhere along the path along the the stages of change. Maybe you're in contemplation, maybe you're in preparation, but either way, now you've heard sort of the reasons to participate in Atlas. So kind of, what's the ask? So we have sent out a survey to your facilities. If you haven't seen the survey go by, certainly email us, or it's likely been sent to one of your program directors. But if you'd rather receive all the links yourself, we are more than happy to send to you. This survey takes about an hour and a half to complete, more or less. Certainly Lisa and Jennifer can weigh in on that, and that will definitely vary depending on the complexity of your sites and how many facilities you have. The survey is due on Friday, January 28th. So just 15 days from now, I was just checking my watch to confirm, just 15 days from now, more than 1,200 surveys have already been submitted across our Atlas states. And this is really the key step to make sure that your profile is accurate on the Atlas website, and that, as Lisa attested to, that you can use that information to help benchmark your facility to others in the area. And as Jennifer attested to, that other facilities can use that information to find quality care, to find places to send their patients, not to mention peer specialists, recovery coordinators, care coordinators who can use it to find care for their clients. And so that is sort of our main ask, and we'll turn it over to questions, but just to note that really the main takeaway that we wanted to note is that there is a survey out. We ask that you participate. It's a very, we'd hope to think a very small ask for what you gain in return. And we also have a simplified submission process if you have more than 2 facilities. But for now, we will turn it over to a question and answer section. So I will stop share so we can see each other's faces. Gary, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the only thing I just wanted to add, we can broaden this to not just questions, but also feel free with suggestions. I'd like to emphasize that I would probably bet my right arm that everybody on this phone call right now, every one of you, want to improve the quality of treatment for those with a substance use disorder. This atlas, I want to just say in neon blinking lights, this is not Shatterproof, take it or leave it. This is all of us working together. So if there's any suggestions you have now that you'd like to just throw out for discussion, or at another time, we want your feedback. We want it. We want to continually iterate version 2, version 3, version 4 of the platform. How do we work with people? How do we engage people? How do we improve the quality of care? We're open. So feel free to, on this call or in other formats, we want your suggestions. Love your suggestions.
Thank you so much, Gary. Carolyn and the team, I have a question from a provider or from a senior leader. And they ask, did I miss this? Is there an overview of what the quality measures are? How is the data collected? Is it self-reported by the facilities? So I don't know, Carolyn, if you would like to address that quickly, that'd be great.
Sure, I'll jump in and I'll note that we'll also send documentation in follow-up. So this, you don't have to be writing everything down right now. So Atlas uses 3 different data sources. So the first is the facility survey, which we discussed. That is self-report, which we then validate. So we're not just taking every facility's word for it. We have a series of validation protocols that we use to make sure that providers are not making up what they say, and also to help make sure that there are no errors. So for instance, if we notice that there's a discrepancy in your hours, we will follow up on that. So that is one of the main sources of data. We also have a patient experience survey, which I mentioned, and so that uses primarily CAPS echo measures, so validated metrics. And then that is completely anonymous, can be filled out at any time during treatment. And that is reviewed by a member of our team, as well as put through an algorithm to ensure that it's not just one person submitting survey after survey after survey saying, I hate this facility, it's the worst. And then lastly, in the first phase of Atlas, we included claims metrics. These were calculated by our state partners, the offices of Medicaid. So using that Medicaid claims data. In this phase of Atlas, we are pausing that calculation. We know that it took a lot of time and capacity for our partners to calculate those, and that ultimately found that patients and family members didn't really find the information useful. They weren't really sure how to interpret that. So rather than kind of plow ahead full steam, we went back to the drawing board with convenings of stakeholders. I think many of you on the call have been to those to understand, are these the right metrics and how can we best calculate and display them? So that's sort of an overview of those key metrics. And when we finish the call, we will happily send out, we have a memo all about the measures that are included in Atlas in those 3 different data sources, where they were drawn from and how they were reviewed. And so, as I mentioned kind of very briefly, just to not to get into the nitty gritty details, but essentially we started with the Surgeon General's 2016 report on addiction to devise those 8 principles of care that Gary referred to. We then convened a group of subject matter experts to understand what are the existing measures in the space that kind of capture these key principles of care. We then met with different groups of experts and also with providers to get their feedback. We worked with the National Quality Forum, who held a public comment period that received over 300 comments. And then it culminated in an expert panel, which then reviewed and gave feedback on the final measures. And so I'll just note that that's how the measures came to be, and that we are continuously iterating on them. So you'll notice that this year we've added measures about telehealth, obviously both with the onset of COVID and just the fact that telehealth is taking up a bigger space. And then we also include questions that won't be displayed publicly just for our research purposes about how your facility has been impacted by COVID, whether you've had staffing shortages, you've had to increase hours, decrease hours, et cetera.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carolyn. So we have 2 more questions. I'll start with the first, and this one I think is best answered by our lovely data team member, Christine, who's on this call. And the question is there a specific person to contact should we have questions about completing specific items on the survey? There are some questions with drop-down options that we are unsure of how to respond to, which options to pick. So I don't know, Christine, if maybe you want to answer this one, or Carolyn, whoever's best for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Thanks, Amelia. And thank you for your question, Megan. So this is a pretty common question, and sometimes providers, specifically with their MAP programs and listing medications and things like that, it can be kind of tricky to understand how to best answer certain questions. And so the best way to contact us about this is emailing atlas@shatterproof.org, and that will go straight to the data team, my team, and we will reach out to you directly, or you can submit a help desk request, and that will entail listing what kind of trouble you're having. You'll get a ticket number, and you can list the address for the facility you're struggling with the survey, and we will reach out to you and resolve that pretty quickly within a 48-hour period for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. So I'll move to the next question. Unless Carolyn, if you had anything to add there, feel free to jump in. So the next question is from Christina, and she asks, when do you expect Florida facilities to be added?
Sure, I can take that. My name is Leah Kaufman, and I am the lead for our implementation in Florida. So for Florida and also for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Louisiana, who are currently in the midst of data collection, we plan for the website to be available in early May. The launch date might vary from state to state, depending on whether we do an in-person event or if we have a virtual kickoff, but planning right now for that first week of May.
Thank you, Leah. Next question we have, you guys are really putting them in the chat. I love it. Keep them coming. So this question is from Doug, and they ask, how will you be acquiring payer data in the short run, if not a Medicaid facility?
Great question, Doug, and I can jump in here. And apologies, the downside of being in an in-person building is moving to make sure you're not in a space with too many other people. So that's a great question. We work with both Medicaid and commercial payers. So once we are moving to the next steps of the claims measures planning and calculation process, usually the way that we've done it in past is partner with for-profit payers to receive just the calculated data. We don't receive any personally identifiable information, but they send us the metrics. And so in that case, we've worked with several different commercial payers and hope to continue to do so. But again, just to reiterate, we won't be calculating claims measures at this time. Right now, we're making sure that we have a strategic plan in place so that when we do prepare to calculate those measures, we're doing so in a way that not only is not burdensome, but also that doesn't, for instance, penalize facilities who serve patients with a lot of co-occurring disorders.
Awesome. Thank you, Carolyn. The next question comes from, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Leah. I'm sorry. I was just going to welcome Doug with his Penn State hat on there. My daughter went to Penn State. It's a big thing around my house. So.
Very cool. All right, next question is from Brad. And Brad asks, could you please explain what the validation process is for validating the provider surveys?
Sure, and I can start, and then Christine, if there's anything I missed, if you want to jump in. So we have a 3-step, or really a 3-phase validation protocol, I should say. So the first is that within the survey itself, you'll notice that there are several kind of, not necessarily check questions, but validation questions. So for instance, we ask if you are certified or accredited for various accreditations and certifications. And if you select that you are, we ask that you upload documentation to prove it. So that's sort of a very basic first step. The next that we do is that we have a series of kind of analysis algorithms, I would call them, that look at the answers, that look at and analyze the answers to the surveys to understand if there are any, what I described as discrepancies. So if there are any cases where a provider answered a certain question one way, but another question a different way in a manner that isn't consistent, or if we're seeing that there are any responses really outside of the norm. So for instance, if the average number of patients that each facility serves is say 1,000 in a month, and one facility says that we serve 10,000 patients, that would be flagged. And then the final kind of component of our validation protocol is that for a random subset of facilities, we do a more kind of stringent follow-up in which we ask a series of really much more detailed questions in order to validate their responses. So it's sort of a random assessment.
Thank you, Carolyn. I don't know, Christine, if you want to add anything, feel free to jump right on in.
Yeah, I'll jump in with a quick note. If you have any questions about, how will my facility be displayed, things like that after you submit your data, once our data collection period is completed, we will reach out with a staging site to your profile once we launch it on Atlas, and you can submit any corrections to make sure that your facility is displayed exactly how you want it, as accurately as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christine. So the next question comes from Mary, and they ask, we are CARF accredited. How does this intersect with Atlas?
Great question, Mary. So CARF accreditation is listed on Atlas. It's one of the questions that we ask about. We also have met with the CARF team and the ASAM team before. Right now, there's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that one cancels out the other in any way. It's rather that CARF accreditation is reflected on Atlas.
Thank you, Carolyn. And so the last question I have in the chat, and feel free to keep sending them since we have some time left, but comes from Doug. And Doug asks, how would you describe how your locator is currently different than SAMHSA? Great question, Doug. And I'll let Carolyn take that one.
Sure, that is a really great question, Doug, and something that we've certainly heard before. So glad that you brought it up. So I'd say that there are first kind of 2 key differences that I think that both the public and providers will notice. So the first is that while SAMHSA has information about the services that facilities offer, it doesn't clarify the extent to which those services correspond with what we know to be best practices. So what I mean by that is that SAMHSA may list that a facility offers methadone, but they may not clarify that for patients with opioid use disorder, offering medications for addiction treatment are a best practice. And so I know Lisa brought this up earlier, it's really great to see reflected that, what providers know to be best practices are being shown to the public as indeed those best practices. And that's really what makes Atlas unique, is that quality element. I'll also note that on Atlas, as I mentioned, there is a patient survey using validated feedback metrics. And so patients or a family member acting as proxy can leave feedback on facilities. And we know that that's certainly of interest to patients and family members. Similarly, along the lines of the quality metrics, SAMHSA's locator doesn't have kind of a password protected portal for providers. Really, it's what you see on the public facing website, and that's it. With Atlas, we didn't just want to be a locator, we wanted to move forward the quality of the addiction treatment system. And so that's why we have those password protected portals, so that providers who submit data, our state partners, our payer partners, can get a more detailed view of the data and understand where there are gaps in quality, opportunities to improve, and what those technical assistance resources are. And I just got a note from Gary, just to follow up on the last question, Christine's note about reviewing your data before it goes live on the website. I'll also note that if for whatever reason you decide that you do not want your data live on Atlas, you can contact us at any time and we will remove those data. So there is an opportunity for you to say no, thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, thank you, Carolyn. Once we collect all the data, you'll be sent a staged website, a staged web page, which is not live. You can look at your data, and you have three options. You can do nothing and say it's all. You can think it's all accurate and it's fine. You can email us and saying, I think 3 of these things are wrong. Can you look into it and let's see if we can get it corrected? Or number 3, you can say, you know what, I changed my mind. Take it all down. I don't want it displayed. No one's ever done that, or maybe one treatment program. I don't know if anyone has ever done that, Carolyn. So there's been a couple. 3, 1.
It's fewer than 10 out of the more than 1,200 facilities who have submitted data.
Okay, so you have that option. So, and because you have that right. Just want to make sure everyone knows that. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying, Carolyn and Emily. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Carolyn. We have another question from Doug, another great question. Doug asked, you mentioned that you would be marketing the platform. How will you be doing that?
Great question, Doug. And actually, you'll see that one of the names of the participants is Laura Whitaker, who is our outreach and communications coordinator, who has just started this past Monday and will be driving a lot of that work. But to keep it kind of short and sweet, we market Atlas through several different ways. So the first is digital advertising. We have ads on Facebook, on Google, on websites. We have what are called display ads. So for instance, if you go to an article about addiction, you may see an ad for Atlas at the top. And those only run in the states where people can currently search for Atlas facilities. We also do ads with podcasting. So if you listen to any podcast on the Limonada Media Network, you may have heard our advertisements. We also do what is called sort of out of home, which means in this case, billboards and business cards. So if you are in West Virginia, you may have driven past some of our billboards in that state. And in Louisiana, those billboards will be going live shortly. In many of our states, oh, thank you, Leah. In many of our states, exactly. So for those of you in Louisiana, you will soon be seeing this billboard in, I believe it's 5 different locations in the state. So other people will see, thanks, Leah. So you will be able to see that nice and clear. And in West Virginia, we know that those billboards are already live now. We also hand out business cards, marketing materials, flyers, and then we also do sort of boots on the ground work, presentations, trainings to different community members. I just talked with the YMCA in New Jersey about training their staff and about presenting to their members. And we present at national and state-based conferences. We will also be developing a toolkit for providers so that they can use it to share with patients, so that they can say, you know, hey, we're on Atlas, here's how you can leave feedback.
Yeah, Caroline, just to add to that, all that list is exactly right, but a few other things. Embedding ourselves with state resources. In all the states, we're training their helpline specialists. When someone calls the state helpline, where millions of dollars in each state are used to bring people to their helpline. So we're capitalizing on that in partnership with the state. We're training their helpline specialists, so the helpline specialists know how to use Atlas and we get it out to people who call. We're already on the website in West Virginia. We're already on the website in Delaware. We're on we're working to do it in all the other states right now. We're not only train the helpline specialists, but when you go to the website that says help me, whatever, Delaware, help me, addiction, whatever state it is, we're on the website. So we're embedding ourselves in partnership with the states. You know, and that just brings out a broader component here that I'm not sure we've emphasized enough, that this is not Shatterproof. I've mentioned on this call a lot, it's a partnership with all of you. It's also a partnership with each of the states. so that we're not expanding by county or by city or et cetera. We're doing it state by state. And we only go into a state where the state wants to partner with us and is putting up funding to show that commitment and give us the funding to do what we need to do. So it's a partnership with the state. So everything that Carolyn mentioned is exactly right. Every state is doing their own list of things to get the word out. And that's just going to grow and grow and grow. It's only been out there 18 months. And you can see all the traffic we're getting now. That traffic is only for 6 states. We're going to be live in 10 states in a few months. And we'll be alive in California, which is like a lot more. Obviously, the size is tremendous. By November, all that traffic is going to be coming and multiplying and multiplying and multiplying.
And can I just add to that, Gary? This
Sure.
is one area where our state advisory committees play a huge role in developing that grassroots outreach approach. And it can be very unique from state to state. So one thing I wanted to call Louisiana out on, because I see that our Karen Stubbs with the Louisiana Department of Health is on. They have added Atlas to their Supreme Court resource database. So the drug courts are using that for referrals. There's just so many unique partnerships depending on the state that you're in that we really rely on you all, the folks participating on the advisory committees. Because I see that some of you sitting on the call today are on advisory committees. So if you ever have ideas, please feel free to send them to us. But just know that we, like Gary said, it is so many different people providing input into how we do this.
Great. We also, just to add on to that, because the list is long. We have 2,000 ambassadors who are like super volunteers of Shatterproof. They've all been given a toolkit, and they're all getting it out. I mean, our traffic for the first 9 months, 10 months we had projections. We doubled what we thought we were going to do. So it's just going to keep exponentially growing. A great question.
Wonderful. And thank you all so much for posting your questions in the chat. I don't have any more at this time, but if you think of any questions, and I'm sure Carolyn will mention this as well, feel free to send us an email at atlas@shatterproof.org. Sorry, I'll put that in the chat again since I just spoke. And we will get back to you with any questions that you have. So thank you guys.
And I'll just say a final closing word. Thank you all again so much for your time, for truly taking an hour out of your surely very busy days to attend this event and ask your questions, share your comments. Just as a reminder, that survey is due before January 28th. And in follow-up, we'll be sending out a message that you can send to your staff to encourage them to submit the survey or to require them. Yeah, we'll defer to you. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at atlas@shatterproof.org, both on the slide, and Amelia put it in the chat. And also, yes, we will be sharing a recording of the event along with the slides. Great question, William. And if you're still unsure about participating or have any questions about a particular state, you can reach out to our state engagement team, so myself, Leah, and Angad. And so thank you all. And as you leave, if you could please respond to the exit poll. We thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, everyone.
I see that we still have a few people who are on. For those of you on, if you have any questions that you'd like to share aloud, it's a slightly smaller group. So certainly want to give you the opportunity to do that. Not that you would have been bashful in any case. Thank you, Megan. So we are now at 11, so we are going to end today's event. Thank you again for joining us, and a recording and these slides will be sent in follow-up. And don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. We hope you have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye all.